Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to explore the world of cybersecurity and, more specifically, the principles that make up its foundation.
Yeah.
We're talking like how to actually use this stuff in real life.
Cybersecurity seems really intimidating with all the technical language, but the basics are, well, kind of straightforward, really. You lock your doors at home, you make sure the windows are secure. Well,
It's like common sense.
it
It's
is.
like building a castle. You got those huge walls and a moat
Yeah.
and those, drawbridges. You're not just relying on one thing, right?
Exactly. It's all about having like layer after layer of protection. And that's defense in depth. You don't want a single point of failure. So if one security measure goes down, you have backup.
Right.
Think about trying to get into, say, a sensitive database. You'd have multi-factor authentication to, verify the user.
Oh, like needing a password and then also getting a code sent to your phone or something.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can have like endpoint protection on their computer, firewalls to control the network traffic, vulnerability testing to find and fix any weaknesses.
And you got to encrypt the data itself, right? It's like locking that data in a safe that only certain people can open.
Oh, absolutely. Encryption is really key for defense in depth. So just like your house has all these layers of security, cybersecurity uses all these different layers to prevent unauthorized access and protect that valuable data.
Okay, so defense in depth makes sense. But what happens if someone does get through all those defenses? Like what then?
That's when the principle of least privilege comes into play. It's about containing the damage. Imagine you're giving people keys, but only to the rooms they actually need to use.
So more giving everyone access to everything just in case they might need it someday.
Yeah. Every extra access point is just another risk. Think about, say, a web server, one that hosts websites. If you're not using services like FTP or SSH, you just, disable them. That reduces the attack surface, which basically means there are fewer ways for an attacker to get in.
So it's like, locking the doors and windows you're not using.
Right.
Makes it harder for anyone trying to sneak in.
Exactly. And then the next principle is about making things way harder for someone on the inside, someone malicious, to act alone. It's called separation of duties.
Separation duties. So does everyone get a partner to like watch over their every move?
Think of it as a door. It's got two locks, and each lock needs a different key, and two different people have those keys. You need both keys to get through.
But one person can't just like decide to go rogue and access all this sensitive information.
Right. It forces them to work together if they want to do something shady. It makes those activities way harder to pull off and way more likely to get caught. In IT, this could be it could be something like requiring an independent person to approve a database access request. Your manager can't be the one to also approve your request. Someone else needs to look at it too.
Checks and balances.
Yeah.
I like that. This definitely increases the chances of catching something fishy before it becomes a huge problem.
Mhm.
So we've covered layering security, limiting access, and then dividing responsibilities. What's next?
Next up is a principle about building security into a system from the very beginning. It's called secure by design. Instead of like adding security later on as an afterthought, you're thinking about it right from the start.
So it's not like installing a security system after the house is already built.
Right. Like imagine you're building a skyscraper and you're building it in like an earthquake zone. You'd want to design that building to withstand earthquakes, right? From the ground up. You wouldn't wait until it's all done and then be like, oh, better make it earthquake proof?
Yeah, no, that's just asking for trouble.
In cybersecurity, secure by design means that security is built into every step, from the requirements to the design, the coding, the installation, testing, and even the ongoing maintenance.
So security is like built into the very DNA of the system. It's not just a Band-Aid you slap on at the end. Okay, that's 4 good principles down. What about the 5th?
This one's all about keeping things, manageable. It's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid.
Well, that's definitely memorable. But why is simplicity so important in cybersecurity?
Because if you make security measures way too complex, you can actually make things less secure. It's like if the rules are too hard to follow, people will try to find ways around them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's human nature to want to take shortcut, right? Especially if something feels like too time-consuming or really complicated. I know I do it.
Right. And when people start bypassing security protocols, the whole system becomes weaker. Think about some of those crazy password rules companies have, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, got to be a certain length. And then they make you change it all the time.
Oh, man. Tell me about it. It's like I spend half my life trying to remember new passwords, and then I end up writing them down somewhere super unsecure, which totally defeats the purpose.
Exactly. So the KISS principle is about finding that sweet spot where it's secure enough to, deter those attackers, but it's simple enough that people who are actually supposed to be using it can follow the rules.
So it's about balancing security with usability. User-friendly, but still effective. Like 5 to live by. Is there an approach we should, run away from screaming?
There is, and it's called security by obscurity. This is the idea that if you keep the inner workings of a system a secret, it'll be secure. It's like having a secret recipe. It's supposed to be amazing, but you're not allowed to, taste it to check. Would you trust that?
I don't know if I would. It's like, what are they hiding,
Exactly. Real security relies on systems where, everyone knows how it works, but only certain people have the key. Think of a really strong lock on a door. Everyone knows how locks work, but only you have the key.
So it's not about hiding how something works. It's about controlling who has access.
Exactly. And that's where things like encryption come in. Algorithms like AES and RSA, these are used to encrypt data. They're public knowledge. What makes them strong is that the keys used to encrypt and decrypt the information are secret.
So it's like a transparent lock. Everyone can see how it works, but only the person with the key can actually open it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Security by obscurity is kind of like, it's like building a house of cards. It might look impressive, but it's really fragile. One little push and the whole thing comes crashing down.
Okay, so 5 to embrace and 1 to avoid. Got it. What's next on this cybersecurity adventure?
Now we can shift gears a little and talk about how to actually protect your information using something called the CIA Triad.
The CIA? Wait, are we talking spies now? Like secret missions?
Not quite, but protecting information is definitely one of their top priorities. But in cybersecurity, the CIA Triad stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Okay, that makes way more sense. So not about espionage, it's about keeping our data safe.
Right. We can start with confidentiality. This is about keeping sensitive information private, like, you lock in your diary or a bank keeps cash in a vault. Only certain people should be able to get to it.
So it goes back to that principle of least privilege, right? Making sure that only the right people have access to the right information.
You got it. But there's more to it than that. There's also authentication and authorization. Authentication is, it's about confirming who you are, proving you're actually you. Authorization is about what you're allowed to do. So just because you can get into the building doesn't mean you can get into every room.
So it's like having a key card that gets you into a building, but, it might not unlock every single door. You might only have access to certain areas.
Exactly. In the digital world, we use stuff like multi-factor authentication to protect accounts and then role-based access controls to limit what each person can see and do. But there's another big piece when it comes to confidentiality.
Encryption. You mentioned that before, like putting your data through a secret code machine.
It is. Encryption scrambles up information so only the people with the right key can unscramble it and read it. It's really important for protecting data when it's traveling over the internet, like when you send information, and also when it's just sitting there, stored on your computer or up in the cloud.
So confidentiality is about keeping things private. Got it. What about integrity? Does that mean my data has, good morals?
Well, that would be nice, but no. In this case, integrity means making sure the data hasn't been messed with. Like, those tamper evidence seals you see on products? You know right away if someone's broken it.
So it's about verifying that the information is real, like the real deal, and that it hasn't been changed at all.
Exactly. To do that, we use techniques like digital signatures and message authentication codes.
Oh, sound really technical. Can you break those down a little? What are those exactly?
Think of them like a digital fingerprint for your data. So if even one tiny piece of that data changes, the fingerprint won't match up anymore and we'll know something's wrong. It's a huge red flag that the information might have been compromised.
It's like a digital detective. This has got to be really important for things like financial transactions and medical records where, everything has to be accurate. Speaking of keeping things secure, what about blockchain? I hear about that all the time. Where does that fit in with data integrity?
Oh, blockchain is fascinating. It's a distributed ledger technology, which means that the records are spread across a network of computers instead of being stored in one central place.
That's like having multiple backup copies,
Yeah.
right? Makes it a lot harder to lose or mess up.
That's one way to think about it, yeah. But what makes blockchain really special is that once a record is added, you can't change it.
It's like a permanent tamper-proof record.
Exactly. And this opens up all these possibilities. Secure voting systems, tracking products, verifying digital art. It's amazing.
Wow. Okay, my brain's getting a little full. We've covered so much already. Maybe it's time to move on to that last part of the CIA Triad. Availability.
Yeah, we have covered a lot. Take a breath. We'll get to availability in a bit.
All right, so availability. What's that all about in terms of this CIA Triad?
So availability is about making sure, that authorized users can actually access data and systems whenever they need to.
So it's like having a card that's reliable. It gets you where you need to go when you need to get there.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want your car to break down when you have a big meeting, right?
Yeah.
Same with your data. If you can't get to it when you need it, well, it doesn't really matter how secure it is or how private it is.
That makes sense. So what kind of things can threaten availability?
Well, one of the biggest threats is something called a denial of service attack or a DOS attack.
Denial of service. That sounds kind of scary.
It can be, yeah. Imagine a website, right? And it gets hit with so many requests, like all at once, that it crashes. And now real users can't get to it. That's a DOS attack.
So it's like blocking the entrance to a store with a huge crowd so no one else can get in.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And these attacks can get even worse with something called a distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS. That's where the attacker has like multiple systems, a whole bunch of them, working together to launch an even bigger attack. This group of systems is called a botnet.
Oh, wow. So instead of one crowd, it's
Right.
like crowds coming from all directions all at the same time. No way to get through.
Right. And these attacks are really tough to stop because they take advantage of how the internet works at a basic level.
Sounds like a nightmare for anyone running a website or like an online service.
It is. It can cause a lot of damage, lost revenue, damage to reputation, all kinds of problems.
So how do you stop these DOS and DDoS attacks? Can you even stop them?
It's a tough one, yeah. But there are ways to make things harder. One is to have like multiple systems in place so that if one server goes down, another one can take over.
It's like having a backup generator at home. If the power goes out, you're ready for anything.
Right. You can also use special security devices. These can spot the bad traffic and filter it out before it even gets to your server.
So it's like a bouncer at a club. They can spot troublemakers and keep them out.
Exactly. And then there are cloud-based services. They can basically absorb these attacks and like deflect them.
Wow. So it's like a whole industry just sprung up around protecting against these attacks.
It has. And it's always changing because the attackers are always coming up with new tricks. It's a bit of a digital arms race,
A constant battle. That's kind of scary, but also like really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that's why it's so important to stay up to date on the latest threats and, the best practices in cybersecurity.
Okay, so we've got confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The CIA Triad. What's the big takeaway here? What do you really want people to remember?
The main thing is these three principles, they work together, right, to give you a really complete approach to information security.
So it's not enough to just like keep data private. You also need to make sure it's accurate and that you can get to it when you need it.
Exactly. And these principles apply to everybody, not just companies or government agencies.
Yeah, it's not just about protecting big organizations. We all have to protect our own information too.
Oh, yeah. Whether it's personal stuff, finances, our online identities, we all got to know the risks and do what we can to, stay safe.
It's like a cybersecurity checklist. Confidentiality. Is my info private? Integrity. Is it accurate? And availability. Can I get to it when I need to?
That's a great way to put it. Breaks it down and makes it a lot easier to, to wrap your head around.
This has been awesome. We've gone through all these essential security principles, the CIA Triad, and we've talked about like how to actually use these things in our own lives.
And I hope you've learned like how important cybersecurity is. It really is a huge part of our world now, with everything being so connected.
I know I have. But before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. What's one thing our listeners can do, like today, to be safer? What's your best piece of advice?
That's a good question. I'd say start with multi-factor authentication. Turn it on for all your important accounts. It's not that hard to do, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to protecting your data.
Awesome advice. Like adding another lock to your front door.
Yeah.
Seems like a small thing, but it makes it that much harder for anyone to, to break in.
Exactly. And remember, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. If we stay informed and pay attention and make good choices, we can all help create a safer digital world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cybersecurity. We'll see you next time for another one. Until then, stay safe out there in the digital world.